Texans Unfiltered.
Here we go.
A Houston football podcast for your Houston Texans.
What up? What up, guys? YoungAriGold here, Texans Unfiltered. We are back for another episode. I am joined, as usual, by my friend and co-host, John Wade, the Garnet Texan. John, what is going on over there?
Not too much, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. Yeah, I'm real good. Life's good. Life's happy. Wife's happy. It's great.
That's everything. Life's happy, or wife's happy, then life is happy. Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, everything's good, man. I don't know, just things are just a good day, really good day. I was today. It was really weird. My buddy started a YouTube page like 6 months ago, and he started it's called The Pursuit of Possibility. And so it's, John, are you going to be on? I hate when you're on your phone on the stream. It's so annoying.
Why is this annoying? I'm trying to just tweet out that we're live.
I don't know, because every time I feel like I look up during this live stream, I like your head's always down.
That's possible.
It is definitely possible. Anyways, he started this thing. He started this YouTube channel called The Pursuit of Possibility, and this guy's like the most positive guy I've ever met in my entire life. Really, just a great guy. And his goal was to be a motivational speaker. And we've become pretty good friends. And I was a mentor at Google, and he was like, "Hey," and it's grown really, really quick. And he's like, "Hey, I want to have you on." And so I was his first interview today, and we just talked about like positivity and mindset and determination, and then we talked about Kobe for like a solid 20 minutes. It was pretty cool. So I'm excited to see how that turns out. But other than today's just been a good day. This has been a good week. I'm excited to finish up the season recap, kind of put 2019 behind us, and look forward. I guess before we get into that, any thoughts on the Jalen Strong interview?
So I think this is the one that's probably the comment that's going to create the most conversation, where you said that they respect him as a coach, but maybe not as a man.
Yeah, I was kind of taken back by that. But at the same time, it also wasn't necessarily surprising. Like, I don't think if fans heard that would be somewhat surprising to them, just because you see the way Bill O'Brien comes off, right? And we've seen some of the moves that he's made, at times emotional, right? JD, Jalen, probably a little emotion aspect, Deontay Foreman, things like that. So not re-signing Kareem, whatever it would be. But I mean, I don't think it was surprising. I think the biggest surprise I took away from him was the fact that he thinks this Texans offense is a top 3 offense in the league.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, that he even said that he thought Bill O'Brien was one of the offensive genius of the leagues. So there's respect there. And even go back where I think he's talking about was when he also talked about how O'Brien plays mind games.
That was interesting.
That, to me, that's that old school coaching, how they used to motivate you. There was always famous stories about Jadeveon Clowney when he was back at South Carolina. That's how they would motivate him. They'd say, "Hey, that guy over there, he said this about you, or he said that about you, or this guy over there says," like one of the things that one of the Clemson offensive linemen said, "Oh, they're just, that defensive line is Jadeveon Clowney and a bunch of nobodies." So they would really just feed into the locker room stuff with how O'Brien is and his personality and how big his personality can be at times. I think that's probably what he kind of does. It's like, "Jalen, you don't really want to be out here." I think he would say things like that. Like, "Jalen, you don't look like you want to be out here. Jalen," it's like, if you don't want to do this, just go home. Where you can kind of pick up with, especially like Strong, he had other things going on, and that's not the type. He needed positive reinforcement, not that negative, drag you down type thing.
Like Brian Cushing, you could say that too, and Brian Cushing is going to respond, right? Like, and this all goes back to just managing people in general, right? You have to know your audience, and you have to know how they want to be led and how they want to be communicated towards. And if you can't be adaptable to each individual, then the chances of you being successful are very, very slim. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I mean, the fact that, he did say that OB is considered one of the greatest offensive minds in the league. And, I'm sure like any of the listeners or fans that were listening to it at that time when they heard that, I hope they weren't like drinking or smoking or anything like that, because I guarantee you they choked.
Yeah, I think that you timed when we released the podcast, you timed that pretty good. So you didn't kill anybody accidentally.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, other than that,
granted, after all the CBD talk, they may have been,
Yeah. No, I mean, concrete flower. Why not? Concrete flower. No, but it was cool for Jalen to come out. It was funny when before we started, he was texting me, telling me that like, hey, like if I'm going to do this, I don't want to come off as a bitter old player. He's like, I have a ton of friends still in the locker room that I talk to. That's not how I roll. I don't want to be known that way. And I told him, I was like, lucky for you, we're an independent media. Like we're not FS1, ESPN. Hot takes and like clicks are nothing that we've tried to garner. Like we just want to have an organic relationship. And the relationship means more to me than being able to get 25,000 listens if you said something about, whatever. And he was like, that's interesting. He's like, it's very rare that interviews happen like that. I was like, well, it's kind of how we are. But yeah, I thought it was cool, man. He was a very cool guy, very open. Took accountability for the early parts of his career in Houston. I think that really shows his development and who he is as a man and where he's at now. A lot of people can't do that. I still have issues at times. I even mentioned it last night. There are times where I can't take accountability for certain things. I think a lot of people struggle with that. But for him to kind of own up to what happened here, and I totally forgot about the drug charge after his rookie season. I totally forgot about that. Hearing him talk about it, yeah, it was interesting. I thought it was a good interview. The audio quality on his phone was awful, but it wasn't the Roadcaster. So I think maybe he was had a little too much CBD that day, but it was awesome. I mean, he was a great dude, and he said he'd do it anytime. So, all right, let's get into this 2019 recap. We ended last week's podcast with the biggest disappointment, in my opinion, as far as the loss to the Carolina Panthers. We recapped the offseason, free agency additions, the draft, Brian Gaines being fired, and then went through the first 4 games of the season. So let's hop into where we are now, which is week 5 against the Atlanta Falcons at NRG. And this was the game that I think every Texans fan at some point thought they would see this season from an offensive standpoint. But we didn't see it consistently enough through these first 4 weeks for us to think that this was a possibility. And Deshaun was on fire.
It was arguably our most complete game. Even with some of the other wins that we had against bigger teams, like we just straight out won it. And to put it quite bluntly, we just dominated the Falcons.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to and I asked Jalen about it yesterday. It just goes back to the biggest frustration with this fan base right now is just the fact that you don't know which Texans offense you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get a consistent team that shows up every week and is able to put up 53 points against the team, or if you're going to get a team that, against Carolina, put up a total of 10 points. So I really think that part of the fandom right now is the frustration. You know that they're able to do these things. They're capable of doing these things. The fact is that it just never happens. Or no, sorry, it doesn't happen consistently. And I understand that sentiment. I mean, I get it. Like, we have the talent on offense. There's no reason for us to not be able to put up points whenever we need to. But the lack of being able to do that this season was really the most frustrating part about this team.
Yeah, and it was interesting what he said, and it's something that we've actually kind of talked about. how hard the NFL just is. Like it's hard. These are guys out there that are working for their paycheck as well. Like they're not going to go over there and just roll over because you're supposed to be the better team. And then the next one, it wasn't very surprising. He talks about how just all the little things, how they tie into each other, how your game plan gets thrown out the window if somebody gets a false start or if you don't run a kickoff back where you expect it to. And then the thing to me that was actually very, very telling is he kind of put it when he talked about Bill O'Brien was just having all the right pieces in play. And again, a player said that. A player that was cut by this guy said that with Bill O'Brien, it's like sometimes he doesn't have all the pieces in play. Like one injury just throws everything off.
Well, for me, that was the biggest actual takeaway from me, like outside of the shocking parts of it, was the fact that when I made the statement / question about him wanting power and his ultimate goal was just to have power, or him being able to at least just get the players he wants in the offense, I said that I think it's really more about him being able to get the pieces he believes he needs. And he agreed completely with that statement and said that he agrees 100% and said, Texans fans are going to have to give him another 2 years to see what he's capable of as a GM. I thought that was very telling. It's something I've personally been screaming for the last 2 years, is the fact that I think that he has an offensive philosophy in his mind that he needs certain pieces to be able to execute at the level that he wants to. And I think this season, the expectations were so high because we started to see what those pieces would look like together. The issue was that we just didn't see it consistently. But when the team put it together consistently, it was like, holy shit, like this is a real team. And then he called him a Super Bowl contender, which from the outside looking in, for somebody that's been in the locker room, you could tell that there wasn't a personal grievance against Bill O'Brien when he talked. And you could hear it, that he truly believes that. He has no reason to say that outside of the fact that he thinks that that's the case. I mean, he thought Deshaun would be MVP this year. So he obviously thinks highly of the team. But I think he also expected this Atlanta game, right? This is what we all expected from this team, especially with the acquisition of Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills.
Right, definitely. I mean, it went in, I think we were even trailing at halftime. Like the first half was actually very terrifying. We were like, oh no, not again. And then the third quarter, we just came out and straight up waxed them. And the second half, it felt like every time we touched the ball, we were going to score. And good things just started to happen, and things just started to flow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Deshaun had a great game. The offense as a whole had a good game. So, all right, let's move on to week 6. That was the Kansas City Chiefs at Kansas City.
And just a reminder, we were 4-2 going into this game against the Chiefs.
4-2 going into this game. And this schedule, when we looked at this schedule before the season started, we thought week 6, 7, 8, no, sorry, it was 4, 5, 6, and 7 that we thought if we could at least come out of those games winning 3 out of the 4, we would be good. So just keep that in mind. But this is the Kansas City game, week 6 at Arrowhead, also known as the ankle game, the game where Taylor, we had Jalen Strong on the podcast yesterday. So you can find that on any of your podcast platforms. Thanks, Eric. So, yeah, this is also known as the ankle game, right? This is where the narrative was written that, of course, the Texans beat the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes wasn't 100%. There was a built-in excuse already. And the fact of the matter is the Texans actually handled the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, they were down 14 and then came back and put a whooping on them.
Yeah. It was one of those where Fuller could have ended up having 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
They could not stop Carlos Hyde.
DeAndre could have had one.
DeAndre could have had one. And it was, again, the offense just continued to click from the second half of the Falcons game. And then they took a break in the first quarter of the Chiefs game, and then they just started rolling right after that. And that first quarter wasn't even – usually when we say our offense takes a break, it's on Deshaun, but that wasn't on Deshaun. That was on Fuller dropping several easy passes. Like we had talked about, it had seemed like almost a year since the last time Fuller had dropped a pass. And, he got all of his drops out of the way in the Chiefs game.
Yeah, I mean, so to end the first quarter, the Texans were down 14 and 17-3, and then they answered in the second quarter with 20 unanswered points. Kansas City put up a goose egg in the second quarter. In the third quarter, it was a touchdown by the Chiefs, and then in the fourth quarter, the Texans scored 8. So it was 31-24 to finish the game. Deshaun Watson, this is the game, I remember this podcast very specifically. If you look at the stats, you would think that Deshaun Watson had an awful game. He was 30 or not an awful game, just an average game. He was 30 for 42, so he's very accurate. He only threw for 280 yards and had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. But he also potentially should have had another 3 or 4 touchdowns with Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins. So, I mean, this was the game. I think the fan base as a whole was saying, okay, now we're ready. Now it's time. This is the win that we've been looking for the season, right? We haven't really played a ton of top tier teams outside of the Saints, and this is where the fan base was starting to build a little confidence. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. This was the game where we kind of thought. Right now, there's our South Carolina offensive coordinator. He's started this little thing on Twitter. The worm has turned. The equivalent for the Texans that the worm has turned would have been this game, the Chiefs game. This is the game where all of a sudden we went from being, the almost team to a team that might actually be able to do something. We put a game plan together against the Chiefs that, it looked really, really great. Not only to go into Arrowhead and to not almost blow them out, but there was a very good chance that we should have blown them out. But we got the win. And yeah, it was a little bit dramatic. If anybody watched Instagram Live afterwards, you saw James's reaction, and it's pretty classic. But this was a game that really made us start to look like a top-tier team in the AFC. Granted, we would forget that many times during the season, but this was the first one.
So we win in Kansas City. We head out to Indianapolis, and then the fan base comes back down to earth a little bit because Jacoby Brissett decides to shred our defense, throwing for 326 yards and 4 touchdowns. This is Deshaun Watson's first back-to-back 2-interception game. He did not have a good game. And the offense continued to struggle in the first half. 0 points again in the first quarter. We lost to the Colts 30-23. This was, even though Deshaun wasn't amazing, this was a game where you looked at the defense again and you were like, geez, really? Like, is this what we can come to expect? And what we saw from the defense this season was just an up and down thing. There'd be games where they could play like the Chiefs and they were stopping. Lonnie was on Kelsey doing a great job. And then you had the Colts the following week and you were just like, dude, what the hell?
Yeah, this was the first of the if Kiki starts, we lose games. And Kiki started and we lost. It was one of those, and it's not to throw it on Kiki, but it started to show almost the over-reliance on Will Fuller within the offense, within the offensive game plan. And 23-30 against a Indianapolis Colts team that also would beat the Chiefs, that prior to injuries just kind of wrecking them, we thought that they would be our biggest challenge to the AFC South that year.
Yeah. And but the Colts walked away with a W. So then we go on to week 8. We are playing the Las Vegas Raiders. This game, I don't know.
It was ugly, but we won. That's how I put it.
Yeah, it was ugly, but we won. Derek Carr decided to shred us with yards. We bottled up Joshua Jacobs, which we tended like we were doing all year. We were pretty good against the run, but the offense was just eh. We put up 27 points. We ended up beating the Las Vegas Raiders 27-24. Deshaun had 279 yards, 3 TDs, no interceptions. Carlos Hyde had a good game. Duke Johnson, I believe, had a good game. 4 receptions. This was an ugly win, but at the end of the day, like, you won.
It was ugly, but it was a win.
Yeah. My mom's on the stream. She's so excited.
Oh, that's awesome.
Hi, Mom. She even gave me a little kissy face emoji. I love my mom. Can't wait to see you next week. So we beat the Raiders, and then that's kind of that. Now we're getting to the latter part of the schedule. Week 9 at Jacksonville. This is the game where, we're overseas. We're playing the Jags in London, and everybody showed up to play. And it's funny because this is the first time that we played overseas, and there was a lot of narratives that could go around as far as teams when they played overseas. It was, they could be lackadaisical. They were suffering from jet lag, all sorts of things, right? And the Jags pretty much play in London every year. This next season, they're actually playing 2 games in London, as they are going to start to, in my opinion, move in the direction of being relocated overseas. That's another conversation.
Just like a little side comment on that, I almost feel bad for them because they're going to go 2 this year, and then in a year or 2 they'll go 3, and then they'll go 4, and at that point they never have a home field advantage. I feel bad for Jacksonville fans because you've pretty much just doomed your franchise for the next foreseeable future. Losing 2 home games a year, that's absolutely ridiculous. I cannot believe any franchise would actually agree to do that unless they are doing exactly what they always accuse the McNairs of doing, and that's just chasing dollar signs.
Well, and what is the baseball teams that are splitting? They're splitting home games.
There was
not the Montreal Expo. Sorry,
there was talk about the Rays doing that with Montreal, but I don't think it actually is going to happen. So I remember them talking about it, but St. Petersburg got very, very upset.
I think that's just interesting because, if the Jags have a hard time selling seats now. While right. Yes, we do feel bad for the Jag fans because they are a great. Let me take that back.
They're great. Okay, they were great when they were losing. They were very
when they're not winning, they're a great fan base. When they're winning, they're somewhat insufferable. But they're having a hard time selling seats. So if they ended up going to a split. And that kind of being the case, I could see it just that. I don't know if they'll fully relocate overseas, but I could see them doing a split just because they're building a fan base in London and because of the money. Yeah, at the end of the day, Shad Khan is a very, very – I don't think people realize how smart Shad Khan is as a businessman and what he's capable of doing. And that's what that would be. All right. So anyway, Jacksonville game. We're playing over in London. We showed up and we decided that we were going to whoop them, and we did 26-3. Defense played well. Gardner Minshew looked like the high school version of Case Keenum, and we beat the Jags. Duke Johnson. Yep, big game. 5 receptions for 68 yards. It's so funny. Have you guys noticed the trend here? I'm not looking at the score. I'm looking to see how involved Duke Johnson is before I actually, because then I know if Duke Johnson's involved, I'm pretty sure that we had a great game that day.
Because Duke Johnson is the only part of our running back group that we know will for sure be back this year. We've got to spin some merch around the idea of in Duke we trust, because like we said throughout the playoffs, only good things happen when Duke touches the ball.
That's a very good shirt, in Duke we trust. And then you should play, and then on the back it should be his receptions per game on wins. So that way
no kidding.
All right. So we beat Jacksonville at Wembley Stadium. I have heard murmurs that we'll be over in London yet again this next year, but I don't know for sure, but something that I saw come across. But all right. So we beat Jacksonville. Then, the bye happens. And then I don't know if we need to talk too much about week 11. Let's talk about week 11 a little bit, John. So week 11, we play Baltimore. We lose 41-7. It's one of the worst games as an organization that we've played in general. And that's going back to the expansion year when we had nobody. This game was just embarrassing, right? I remember the podcast prior. I was expecting us to show up. I really thought that this was going to be the game where it's like, okay, we showed against the Saints, we showed against the Chiefs. I was like, all right, we'll be fine. And then it was literally nothing.
We had everything to kind of back it up. We've always played better after the bye. The Ravens were on this high because they're the Ravens and they've just been steamrolling everybody this year. The thought process was if you could get Lamar Jackson to throw the ball, you could beat them. That was what we were supposedly designed to be able to do, is to get him to start throwing, because if you were going to attack our defense, it was going to be through the air. And, we have enough firepower on offense where we should have been able – I mean, granted, we scored one opening drive touchdown all season, not including the playoffs. But we should have been explosive enough to go out there and put up some points and to make them throw the ball. And it was just one of those games that Bill O'Brien, I swear, has one or two every single year where just all the bad things start happening and everything just steamrolls downhill. And that's the best way to describe the Ravens. Just couldn't get going. And it's not necessarily that they quit, but no matter what they tried to do, they just couldn't get in gear.
I am somewhat of a conspiracy theorist when it comes to this game. I think there's a couple things that happened. One, I think the team and Bill O'Brien were looking more at the Thursday night game against Indianapolis, as that had more implications on the division. So I think Thursday was a more important game to them. Two, I think that, how do I phrase this without sounding crazy? I think that they knew there was a good chance they were going to play the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs. The Ravens were expected to finish as a top seed at that point in the season. At that point in the season, the Baltimore Ravens were looked at as the best team in the NFL. They were destroying teams left and right. So I almost wonder if that game was somewhat tanked and they just kind of let the Ravens, I think in the first quarter, it was like, all right, let's see what we can do. And then, okay, we're just going to let them kind of go. It didn't look like Deshaun was engaged. It didn't look like the defense was engaged. There was a lot of parts of this that it just didn't look like the same team in a lot of different ways. Also, John, we need to take a step back. Week 6, we traded a third-round pick that we received in the Jadeveon Clowney deal for Gary Conley, quarterback out of Ohio State. If you've been a fan of the podcast, and you must be if you're on here, unless you're Taylor Bates, that means you did not listen to the Jalen Strong interview, and shame on you for that. So we traded for Gary Conley. Huge Gary Conley fan when he was coming out. I thought this guy was going to make a huge impact. FYI, he makes a huge impact the entire season.
Yeah, it's one of those that at the beginning of the season, had we made the trade for Gary Conley and Jacob Martin, pretend they're on the same team, for Clowney, plus the third-round pick and, Mingo, bark.
God, that's awful. That's bad, dude. For somebody who says they never criticize players and that they have a hard time doing it, and then to bark twice, I don't know if you could have done anything more like That was probably the worst thing you could have done when it came to a player. But we'll let that go. Go ahead. I'm just going to save that soundbite. I'm going to save the soundbite. I'm going to put it on the roadcaster, and I'm going to play that each time.
There's like one time a year where I criticize a player, and Barcavius, like, we just got to roll with it. And I'm sure he's probably heard the joke a million times too because of his name. Whatever. I don't give a shit.
I hope so. I hope you didn't create it. Because if you created it, because at the end of the day, guy's still 6'2", 290.
Yeah, no joke. He's still an NFL player. He's still probably one of the top athletes in the entire world. But when you actually kind of look how the trade shaped up and what we got out of Conley, like, it makes the trade look less disgusting. That's the best way I can put it. It doesn't make it look good, but it makes it look less disgusting. And that's just to kind of put the emphasis on how good of a player Conley ended up being for us. And he'll probably be our number 2 corner for the foreseeable future. He's not a number 1. He's not going to be our. I hope he is, but
I think he is. I think he is a number 1.
Well,
but you have your opinion. I have mine. That's okay.
I hope he is, but I didn't see enough out of him to see him transitioning into being our number 1 guy on number 1 receivers, because he did a great job of shutting down the second receiver. And that's a huge jump to go from taking on the second receiver to taking on the number 1 receiver. But maybe, who knows? I mean, you were right about Roby, so maybe you know more about corners than I do, which is entirely possible. However, to have a guy that looks like he's going to be our number 2 corner for at least 2 years, probably considerably longer than that. Yeah, and he's going to be a solid one at that. He's going to be above league average.
Well, here's the reason why I think that he will be a number 1 corner for us. A lot of it has to do with the fact that when he was with the Raiders, he was playing a lot of zone, which he's not a zone corner. And then, so he spent all training camp with Las Vegas Raiders, played a ton of zone, was asked to do a lot of different things, then came in mid-season, was asked to learn a new system, and performed at an extremely high level. So that's the part that makes me think OTA's training camp with this team, I think he'll be a solid corner. He's got the build to be a solid corner.
There's a reason why he was a first-round pick. He has all the physical talent. It's just putting it all together.
Well, when you look at the Clowney trade, I think it's something that definitely needs to be put into. Why can't I think of the word? This is where you always come into
perspective.
Help me. Perspective. At first, we blasted the Clowney trade. Blast. I mean, I've never been more upset with Bill O'Brien in my life than that day. I was upset. I was emotional. I was so pissed off because I felt like we got nothing. And it wasn't about us trading Clowney, which, yes, I did want to keep him. It was just how the whole situation ended up to where we were not able to maximize his value. And that will be forever something that is on Bill O'Brien's resume in my mind. But
I definitely agree. I mean, we've talked about it at length. Everybody knows where we stand. We're not happy about the trade. We're not even happy after we got Conley for it because there was still value in the trade that we did not get.
And that's the part that I will forever hang on to. But when I think about the trade now, looking at it from when I look at the trade as Martin, Mingo, 3rd round pick, and then now that 3rd round pick turning into Conley, the trade is a lot easier to digest. Jacob Martin at times flashed at an extremely high level. And he's working on the areas of his game as we speak that he needs to work on. Which is being able to be a 3-down player.
He's going to get with Cushing.
Oh. Okay. John's on one tonight. That's awesome. All right. But anyways, yeah. So
he's for real training with Cushing. Like that's not. I'm not making that up. Maybe
I know.
Little gestures for the live feed. People can kind of put their own thought on that.
Yeah. I mean, the trade is definitely more digestible. All right. So let's get back into the season. So then, after getting blown the F out by the Baltimore Ravens and getting ran all over, on 4 days rest, we needed to play the Indianapolis Colts in a big-time in-division matchup on Thursday Night Football. To me, this is the game where I thought, okay, they can still make some noise. Deshaun had a much better game, even though statistically it doesn't look like it was probably his least accurate game he had of the season. But they were able to squeak out a win on 4 days rest and win 20-17 against Indianapolis at home. I thought it was a very impressive win given the circumstances of the blowout, 4 days rest, and it also being a division rival.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially broke the Colts season with this game. This was a game that at the time the Colts were still threatening. I think they were right behind us for the division lead. They looked like they weren't going away. And this game broke them. And this is when their season started to snowball. So it was nice that we got to do that to them for once. And yeah, Watson did exactly what he needed to do to get us through that game. It's one of those games where you can actually argue that we won one without Deshaun being the most dominant player out there. But that's only if you look at stats. If you actually remember watching the game, we don't win that game without Watson.
Yep. No, I agree. It's just one of those games where it's like, you needed a win. Team responded after coming out off of a blow-off and a win that was needed for us to be able to win the division on 4 days rest, and they took care of business. Giovanni.
And I still love how they took care of business. They took care of business where they ended the Colts season and gave the Titans the opening that they needed.
Yep, absolutely. Giovanni Ruiz, do you think that we should restructure Conley's contract? No, I think it's like a $10 million hit with a fifth-year option, right? I believe. Or is it, no, his fifth-year option this year? No, that's Hargraves.
No. Hargraves has to be restructured. Hargraves is not worth $8.8 million. Now,
but Conley, this is fourth year, though, right? This season.
Conley, this is still his fourth year. We have 2 years of him guaranteed.
Yeah.
And they'll extend him. They'll stretch him out.
I agree 100%. All right, so let's get to what I think for Texans fan was probably, I would say, the biggest win in franchise history in the regular season against the New England Patriots. John and I made a trip out of it. We went down there and drove down on a Sunday night for this game. We got with some listeners beforehand at Twin Peaks, which if anybody is ever wanting to get drinks with me, Twin Peaks is my spot. I enjoy 37 or 29 degree cold beer, whatever it is. It's really cold and it's frosty. So the Patriots game. Oh man, I remember everything about this game.
Yeah,
I do. I remember everything about this game. I remember you and I both sitting there saying to ourselves with 47 seconds left that this game is not over yet. And a lot of that just had to do with the Patriots' mystique. The Texans manhandled the Patriots after the opening drive by the Patriots. From that point on, the Texans did everything they were supposed to do. If you look at Brady's stats, he threw for some yards, and you were going to do that against this defense at that time, but everything was underneath. Nothing was open downfield. And the offense was the play that stood out to me this season was the deep ball to Will Fuller that he didn't control and was not able to get the touchdown. And then Bill O'Brien saying, okay, so you guys weren't able to stop that. I'm literally going to run the same play like it's Madden. The only difference is going to be I'm going to have Kenny Stills run that route, and you're not going to be able to stop it. And that's literally what happened. I mean, it's very rare that you see those types of plays happen back to back. And Bill O'Brien just hit the X button on the controller, and boom, they scored. And to me, that's really the position or the play that it stands out in my mind for the season on offense. That was like, why the fuck can't you do this every week?
No kidding. And where did that play go the rest of the season? They brought out a bunch of formations that they didn't use the rest of the or not as much as they probably should have the rest of the season. I don't want to say they went away completely, but they were doing some things with 3 tight ends out there. They were doing some things with some of the deep passes, and Duke Johnson
ate him alive.
Like, it was one of those. It was a Duke Johnson game, and when it was a Duke Johnson game, the passing game essentially went through him to open up the deep passes. And it worked so beautifully against the number one defense in the league in the Patriots. Where on earth was it when, I don't know, when we get to the playoffs, we'll kind of discuss that. If I have one criticism of, I have a lot of criticisms of Bill O'Brien. But my number one would start with is like, hey man, why would you stop using Duke Johnson when every time you did we won?
Yeah, it's a fair criticism.
It's just I don't get it, because I remember at the beginning of the year and Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde were kind of talking about, well, why are y'all working better here in Houston than y'all did in Cleveland? And Carlos Hyde, and one of the things that I liked about him was he said, they're giving Duke the right amount of touches here. They never did that in Cleveland.
Yeah, no, and we saw it this season. I mean, we saw exactly what happens when Duke has the ball in his hand and when he's a part of the game plan. Duke Johnson, we said it when the trade happened that we thought that was going to be the biggest move made this offseason. We believed that is exactly what this team has been missing on offense, was a third down back that has the ability to do anything and everything on the field when he has the ball in his hand. And we saw it this season. Every time he had, there was a number, I forgot what the number was. I think it was like 4 receptions or something like that. I think the Texans won, or something close to that. And yeah, this offense just looks a lot better when Duke Johnson is built into the game plan. All right, let's move on to another game, Swan's favorite game, the Denver Broncos game.
If we had beat the Chiefs, we had the perfect shirt. Perfect shirt if we had beat the Chiefs. Oh, man.
Tell me.
You fucking suck, too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. That would have been great. I just want to get a picture of him doing that, like doing this and then like having his mouth shut.
Get it with the vector graphics, have it underneath, and I would have loved to have worn that to the AFC Championship game.
That's like a bar.
Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But yeah, this is the game where that came from. And you know what? We sucked. We definitely sucked. So the fact that Bill O'Brien at least acknowledged it with the 2, because we definitely sucked. Yeah, Drew Lock is the most punchable faced quarterback in the league right now. He's got to take that over from Phillip Rivers. Because I don't know, Phillip Rivers may continue to play. Granted, Drew Lock may still be there. And part of me, because I follow University of Texas football, is just remembering them in the Texas Bowl and him doing that little backpack shimmy. Dude, that still burns my skin. And so I cannot believe that he came in against Romeo Crennel, who used to always be good at just messing with rookie quarterback minds, and just lit us up. Lit us up.
Drew Lock, for me, I think he could have had a punchable face for me. But then the video released of him singing Young Jeezy Put On the sideline. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to think about punching Drew Lock in the face, just because I thought that was one of the coolest moments I've ever seen a quarterback have. Hey, real quick, let's go on a tangent. How about Baker Mayfield getting head by a gargoyle in Cleveland in the back of a cheesecake factory? I mean, honestly, I was on Twitter and I was messing around. And I was like, dude, I can't believe this isn't a thing, right? If it was a black quarterback, the story would be everywhere. This would have been the story. ESPN would have it. If Cam Newton did this, oh boy. But it's Baker, so they let it go. But what if somebody responded to me and was like, talking about the chick, and I said, if that's what the celebrity life is like in Ohio, I'll pass. And then somebody responded and said, yeah, I can't believe he would risk it all for that. And I said, no shit. I think I could have found a prettier woman under 45 in Gulf Bank in Houston that was living under the freeway that was cuter than that chick. I mean, God, Baker Mayfield is by far the biggest douchebag in the entire world.
And I mean, Baker's fiance or wife or whatever she is now, she's very, very attractive.
She's cute. I don't know about very attractive, but that's the kind of girl you like. So I get it. She's pretty.
Wait, what is that supposed to mean? The type of girl that I like?
Whoa. A white woman has to be extremely beautiful for me to think that to like a white girls. It's just not. It's very rare that I find white girls attractive, but Scarlett Johansson's like one of them. But outside of that, it's not. But Baker Mayfield. I can see it. I mean, she's cute. She looks good in the commercials that he's in there with her, mowing the lawn or whatever it would be. A real man needs to mow his own lawn. Fuck out of here, Baker. You're so trash. But I just thought that whole thing is just too funny. Okay, sorry, Taylor. Okay, look, there are some pretty white women out there. That's just not my thing. That's all there is to it. I like a little spice. All right. So back to.
Oh man!
Off the guard.
I hadn't seen her, but
that's what I'm saying, dude. And here's the part that people aren't talking about the most. This was behind a cheesecake factory. Okay, we're not talking about like meet up with me in a hotel or I'll have my driver pick you up. No. This dude, I watched the entire 35-minute interview with this girl on something called Rover Radio today, and she says that that she came, saw a Range Rover, met up with her, made her leave her phone in the car. She got in the front seat. They started talking. Then they moved to the back, and he just pulled it out, and she gave him head, and then. That was it. And then the best part about this radio show is they talked about how, because she had a picture of his schlong, and these guys we're talking about it and like how tiny it is, but then how it had a curve. I'm dead serious. It was a 35-minute interview, but then
the only reason that I'm entertaining this this offshoot of a conversation is because fuck Baker Mayfield. He is not better than Deshaun. Like that just needs to die. So I'm all for turning into the Browns into our rival. And I don't mean to trash a girl for the way she looks. But this girl, I mean, she just she's on that radio show and she's just falling out of everything. And she probably had a couple of drinks before she came into that. Now, honestly, Baker, I mean, come on, dude.
So the radio show goes and this girl calls in.
And another one called in.
And it's the same story. It's the same story. Meets at the Range Rover and another parking lot. And Baker just has this oral fixation, I guess. He really likes gargoyles and oral fixations are like his thing. And okay. Anyway, we should probably mark this episode as
let's not trash the poor trashy girls any more than their own actions have. I mean,
you saying those trashy girls doesn't make it any better. I hope your father-in-law isn't listening to this episode. We're gonna have to mark this episode NFSW before I upload this tomorrow. Now, so
no doubt.
All right, let's move on.
I just showed my dad how to actually download it and listen. Apparently, he hadn't listened. We've only been doing this for 4 years, and he was like, "So how does this podcast thing work?" I'm like, "Dad, you teach me how to use all the Apple stuff. Like, you're the first one in line to get the Apple stuff, and you can't find a podcast for your own son."
Yeah.
If it was one of my brothers, he would have downloaded it like 3 years ago. No.
Well, my mom's
See how
on
it is.
the live stream, so I got to talk about that stuff while my mom's on here. That's pretty cool. All right, we'll move on now. All right, so we get blown out by the Denver Broncos. Blah blah blah. It was an awful game. Kareem Jackson had the best game of his career and got suspended for PEDs. Kind of interesting. Honestly, did he maybe just use PEDs during that game? I mean, because that game he looked like freaking Superman.
Yeah, I mean, it was his statement game. So if he talked to Kush before he went out there, just so he had a little bit more to. I mean, I could definitely see it.
Are we going to start? Is Kush a dealer?
I don't know. It's just a running joke. Everybody thinks he is. I have a picture of Kush on my wall. I love him. Like I seriously do. But I'm just running with the joke that everybody else in Texans Twitter goes with. That if you need it, go talk to Kush. Granted, if you do need like the legal stuff, because everything's over at he's big on it here in Austin. Apparently, this is where he works out. So I mean, if we ever still went down to South Congress, we'd probably still see him. But I'm not trying to trash him. I'm just joking.
Okay. All right. Well, now you guys know where to go get it from. All right. Week 15, Tennessee Titans at Tennessee. The Texans win 24-21. Deshaun Watson, quiet game, 243 yards, 2 TDs, also another 2 interception game. Carlos Hyde runs wild. DeAndre Hopkins has his, DeAndre Hopkins type game. Duke Johnson is not involved, and that is why we only win by 3 points. We bottled up Derrick Henry for 86 yards. Yes, he still had 4 yards per carry, but if anybody watched Derrick Henry play this year, you would know that 86 yards, holding Derrick Henry to 86 yards is a win in almost every category. So we beat the Titans. Boom, boom. We move on to Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was like the weirdest game ever. I was whale watching when this game was going on, so I had to watch it after. I listened to it on the radio, but yeah, I mean, what was it? I think Jameis threw for
4 interceptions.
Okay,
but he threw for like 1 billion yards.
I'm
not exaggerating that. He threw for.
Look at this. Everybody look. This is when you know.
Come through.
Did it come through?
Nope.
What? Come on. How about now?
Still nothing.
Damn it. Well, if you go to the Google stats of this game, in the interception category, no joke, it has a hyphen symbol, not a number. I'm literally not kidding. It has a hyphen. There's no number there. He threw for 2 in the first quarter, or 3. And yet this offense of the Houston Texans did nothing. Deshaun Watson was 19-32 for 184 yards, 0 TDs, 1 interception. Carlos Hyde only ran for 27 yards and had 1 TD. We only won this game because Jameis didn't know how to throw to his teammates.
Yeah. I mean, Jameis almost threw back-to-back pick sixes. That was just an absolute crazy game. Our defense actually won us a game. I remember, I was driving from Austin to Nashville and trying to watch the game, and God help anybody if you're in Tennessee. I don't understand. Tennessee's about as bad as just bad internet, cell phone, whatever. And the Bucs defense is really, really good, as Tyler is pointing out, Tyler Bates. The Bucs defense, no joke. And, it was a very, very frustrating game. I remember reading on Twitter that there was a lot of fear that Deshaun Watson was playing through a strained Achilles. And he just was not accurate at all. And this wasn't even – and there was times where he even had time to throw and players were open, and he would miss them by a good country mile. It was just one of those weird Deshaun games where they've talked about it before with Deshaun. There's moments where he is almost a surgical precision passer, and then just out of nowhere, he's hitting the Gatorade cooler. And this was a Gatorade cooler game.
Yeah, that game as a whole on the offensive side was just awful. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, their front four is really good, and that showed in the run game. They were able to get after Deshaun, but their secondary and their linebacking core is not. They're average, and we should have been able to take advantage of matchups. This is one of those games where you look at Duke Johnson's stats and you're like, okay, very interesting. That's probably why we weren't moving the ball very well, as we weren't keying in on a matchup that should have been exposed very early on.
In Bill O'Brien's defense, the few times that I remember watching Deshaun try and hit Duke Johnson, it was either at his ankles or like 5 yards the other direction.
Correct. Yeah, Deshaun was off. But anyways, we escaped with a win. Fantastic. All right. Final game of the season, Tennessee. This is a funny game to think about because the Texans didn't play Deshaun Watson and started A.J. McCarron. And A.J. was the first quarterback to score a opening drive touchdown for the Texans this season. The Texans were in this game all through the first quarter and then just decided not to play anymore, and the Titans won 35-14.
Nope. They were moving the ball up and down against the Titans, and once the Titans realized that the Texans were going with about maybe a dozen plays, they were not opening up their playbook, they were able to shut them down. But those dozen plays, the first 3 times through it, they worked, and A.J. McCarron looked great. There's kind of rumors out there in the Twitter sphere that A.J. McCarron may be better than several starting quarterbacks in the league. And just maybe. It'll be interesting to see if they bring him back and how much it'll cost to bring him back. But he looked pretty good. I'm not going to lie. He looked pretty good.
He looked good. And it's funny because I think that A.J. McCarron in the right system with the right coach could be a serviceable starting quarterback. If I had to say a quarterback that he would be from a performance standpoint, probably be Kirk Cousins. I think he could be Kirk Cousins in the right offense. But the problem is with the teams that are willing to pay A.J. McCarron aren't typically the right offense and the right team. I'm trying to even think, who really needs a quarterback outside of the teams that are going to draft one? Cincinnati's going to take Burrow. Miami needs a quarterback. That's not the right system. They'll probably take Tua. Jacksonville could, but it looks like they're riding with Gardner. Who else needs a quarterback?
The Chargers.
The Chargers. I don't know if AJ would fit that scheme. They need mobility at quarterback with that offensive line. I think he's back with us next year as our backup.
Maybe the Raiders.
Wait, did he spend time with the Raiders before us?
He did. Different coach,
wasn't he the backup to Derek?
He was.
Not under Gruden?
I didn't think it was under Gruden.
Was Gruden last year only? Yes. That was his first year last year, right? Gruden.
2018 was his first year.
So then AJ was there.
Was he? Okay. Because to me that's interesting that Gruden let him walk, especially because I think that A.J. McCarron actually does fit that system very, very good. And Carr was, ugh.
Okay, so actually it was Jack Del Rio. Yeah. Okay.
Was it? So, okay.
I don't know. That's why we like having you guys here in the comments, because you guys can keep us straight. Oh no, never mind. It was Gruden. Yeah. So, or if I do Giovanni's, it's Gurdon. So it's John Gurdon. God, I loved everybody tonight. All right. I think AJ could be on a team. I really do. I think he could be on a team. But if I was Kansas City, I would love to see. I would sign AJ McCarron as a backup to Mahomes. I think Andy Reid would be able to get the most out of AJ McCarron if Mahomes went down.
Fair enough.
I don't know. All right, but enough. Who cares? It's a backup quarterback. We'll see. All right, so we end the season. What did we finish? We finished 10-6.
10-6.
10-6. We should have went 12-4, but we went 10-6. If we would have went 12-4, actually, if we would have went 11-6, we would have had a first round bye in the playoffs, but we didn't. So,
imagine if we beat the Saints. We actually showed up against the Panthers or the Broncos. There was 3 games that
the Colts. The first game against the Colts.
The first game against the Colts.
Any one of those games. Any one of them.
Yeah.
But because we didn't, we ended up playing the Buffalo Bills in the wild card round. This is very recent, so we're probably not going to dive too much into this. Everybody knows what happened in the Buffalo game. One thing that I don't think people realize in the Buffalo game is that Deshaun Watson actually had a really, really good game. He was very accurate with the ball. He was 20 of 25, 247 yards, and then obviously a rushing touchdown and a throwing touchdown. And then Carlos Hyde had one as well. I mean, look, first half against the Bills, scary. You know what's funny is if you were to flip the Chiefs and the Bills games, I would have expected the first half of the Chiefs game or the first quarter of the Chiefs game to go how the first quarter of the Bills game went. And then I would have expected our first quarter against the Chiefs to go that way against the Bills. But that's not what happened. And that just shows you how this league really is. Buffalo Bills have a very good defense. We've talked about the Buffalo Bills a lot. I like the Buffalo Bills. I like the way they're building. I think that they have a culture. I think they have an organization that's building well. I think they know where they're going and what they want to do. And I think we just got lucky because we have a better quarterback than they do. Deshaun Watson is a superstar.
They're going to be one of those teams. We're going to see them in the playoffs again. They're going to be annoying for the next couple of years. The Patriots may finally start to slip. And if I had to put money on it, I would say that the Bills will probably start to take advantage over it the next couple of years. But we'll see.
God. I didn't hit record.
No kidding.
I just was looking over. I just looked over. Yeah, I just looked over and I was like, how long have we been recording? We haven't.
We're up to an hour and 2 minutes on the show too.
Okay, great. I can't wait to rip this audio from the YouTube. That's going to be fun to figure out. Okay. So we beat the Bills. Fantastic. We all know what happened to the Chiefs. I really don't want to talk about that game anymore. The goal of this is a therapy session to be able to put the 2019 Texan season in the rearview mirror and look forward to 2020. I think the best way to end this recap is to really talk about the expectations going into the season and kind of put everything into it. So when you look at the team and how the offseason happened, I don't think that there were a ton of expectations for this team to do much. People called the front office disorganized. They had no idea how they were building a team. Nobody expected them to do really much in the playoffs. I look at the season as a success. Now, most people would say, well, it's only a success for one team at the end of the year, and I would agree with you. I would agree with that statement. But when I look at this team and I think about all the pieces that were added and how late the pieces were added, the lack of training camps and OTAs and the chemistry with the team that was missing, adding players in the middle of the season in Vernon Hargraves and Gary and Conley, dealing with J.J. Watt's injury, I think that this team did what they could. I think they did what they could do, minus the collapse in Kansas City, which I don't think should be excused. I think the team outperformed expectations. And I think if we would not have lost the way we did to the Chiefs, I don't think this fan base would feel the way they feel right now. I think if that would have been a game where they milked a comeback and it wasn't so quick and we lost on, with 3 minutes to go or something like that, I think this fan base as a whole would feel a lot better. But I think because of the emotions that went through watching that game, I think that's the last that's the last memory you have of the 2019 Houston Texans. And because of that, this fan base is frustrated as hell with just how things happen. And I expect this team to be much better next season. And I expect OB to have this team ready to go. I really do. I think me and John's already is off the OB bandwagon. He's on the fire him. Let's get another coach in here. I am on this is the last season for me for Bill O'Brien as the head coach. Now I say that because now he's a general manager too. So what everybody needs to understand is the fact that because he's a GM now, there's a very good chance in the future that he steps down as coach and somebody else is brought in to be the head coach of the Houston Texans.
I'm actually kind of hoping for that because he's shown that he's actually pretty decent.
Well, let's see how it goes this year.
Right.
Because last year he didn't have any GM for draft. Let's see how he does the draft. Let's see how he handles free agency. I don't want to crown him a good GM yet, but I do like the aggressiveness.
Fair enough. And I mean, that's
what you like is the aggressiveness.
Yeah. And I'm at the point where I've actually had I've had self-reflecting on this, especially as we've done these recap shows. If you go back and you look at the beginning of the season, if you go back and you look at the beginning of the season, it's like, should I have moving goalposts? When we stated what our goals for the year were, what we would have, what we would consider a happy season, I said not embarrass ourselves against the Patriots and the Chiefs. And, we ended up winning them. I said winning a game in the playoffs. We ended up doing that. I said that I would be satisfied with the season if we just made it to the second round in the playoffs. I said I'd be ecstatic with the season, and I would even consider it. Perfect season was us making the AFC Championship. But I said that I'd be satisfied with the season, and I would say that Bill O'Brien earned himself another year by just making it to the second round of the playoffs. And it's unfair of me to kind of move the goalposts. Granted, part of it is because of the way we lost to the Chiefs. That was a very, very, very painful loss. But I hate to say it, we have to put ourselves in we have to put it in perspective on how we got to that position to even be playing the Chiefs. And considering the lack of moves made during the offseason prior to B taking over, considering the amount of pieces that ended up being very key pieces that he had to implement into the team and get them caught up to speed in a relatively short time, I guess I need to kind of chill out. I'm still mad as hell at him. All my criticisms I still believe are very valid and very fair. But it is kind of what it is. Like, Bill O'Brien is a great coach. Like, whether or not he's a great coach for us is up for debate. But I do deeply believe that once he gets fired from here, he's going to go to another organization, and we're all going to be pissing and moaning that we let him go.
So I think this is a great way for us to end the podcast. My thoughts on O'Brien are this. I think he's a great coach. I really do. I think he has issues. I think every coach has issues, though. And I think we saw those issues a lot in the playoffs. It's funny. When you only focus on one team during the regular season, it's very hard for you to understand what else is going on in the league. Your focus is specifically on the Texans. So you're not paying attention to the coaching mistakes that happen throughout the league. And most of you would say, I don't really care. This is my team. That's fine. But what I'm saying is when you look at Kyle Shanahan in the Super Bowl, over 2 minutes left in the Super Bowl, and decided that he wasn't going to take a timeout. He had 3 timeouts, didn't take a timeout, wasted an entire 2 minutes. That was a defining moment in the Super Bowl. In the Titans-Chiefs game, there was something that Vrabel did. I forgot what it was. He did something. I don't know why I can't remember. But these coaches make these mental errors all the time. And I do think that for me to give Bill O'Brien a fair shake at head coach, I have never thought he has had the ability to have the players he believes he needs on this roster. And I think we saw that because he was so aggressive in the trade market to grab the players he was looking for. And I think another offseason of seeing him build this team and getting to the level that he believes we can be at. Look, we have the most important piece that you need in this league to be successful in Deshaun Watson. With that being said, I think that Bill O'Brien can do it. Taylor brings up a good point. Who are you going to hire over Bill O'Brien? I know everybody says Eric Bieniemy. It's so much easier to say than to type, by the way. So like when you tweet Eric Bieniemy. But I think that there's a reason he doesn't have a job as a head coach. You know who's always turned out OCs? Andy Reid. You know who's always the sauce to those OCs? Andy Reid.
One of his OCs won a Super Bowl before he did. I'm
one of his OCs.
Just
How about
saying.
the other 9? How about the other 9? That's all I'm saying. I get it. Yes, Doug Peterson, great coach. It worked out. But how about the other guys that nobody talks about? I just think that, and there's also a chance that maybe he's in the waiting for when Andy Reid steps away. Which would you rather have, a quarterback that you're familiar with and an offense that you're familiar with the players that you have, or go to Cleveland, go to Miami, go to, all these teams that nobody ever wants to really go to, and Freddie Kitchens gets hired, which should speak a lot to the Cleveland organization as a whole. Maybe he's in waiting for when Andy Reid steps away. I mean, Andy Reid now has done something he's never done in his career. It took him 20 years to do. And Texans fans expect Bill O'Brien to do it in 6 because Sean McVay got there, Doug Peterson got there, and Kyle Shanahan got there. Outside of that, it's all been the historic coaches. Tomlins, Belichick. Yes, Coobs got there, but Coobs got there off of a particular quarterback and defense. But I don't know. I just don't think that the next coach is really there yet. Just my thought. I'm rolling with OB. I'm OB 2020.
My argument to that is, since 2000, if you don't get there within 4 years with your team, apparently you need to shake things up. Now, that's only about 19 years. I mean, it's not the largest sample size, but there may be something. And here's the thing about Bill O'Brien. I think that he's really good at finding role players. I think that since he's kind of taken over more of the personnel, like he's done a very good job of finding role players. But we've talked about it before, and I will still stand by this. He doesn't necessarily know how to take advantage of players' strengths, but he knows how to. The way he crafts game plans, it's kind of to hide their weaknesses instead of taking advantage of their strengths. And with the type of quarterback that we have in Deshaun Watson, I'm not entirely sure that this is exactly the right mesh anymore. Because again, it goes back to, I've said it 100 times this year, and I'll probably say it another 1,000 times before he retires. Deshaun Watson is a better thrower than Lamar Jackson. He's a better runner than Patrick Mahomes. He should be in an offense that takes advantage of that. Instead, he's in an offense that relies more on his ability to throw, which, I mean, it's obviously his ability to throw and escape has made him an MVP candidate. Like it's made him a top tier quarterback in the league. But I don't necessarily think that the offense really truly takes advantage of his skill set at this point in his life. I think that if Bill O'Brien was coach when he was in his late 20s, early 30s, that would be a better match than it is currently when Deshaun is we got to take advantage of his athleticism while we can. And maybe a lot of the stuff that Bill O'Brien is teaching him causes him to slow down sometimes. Just maybe. I mean, there's got to be a reason why Deshaun has the ability to call the play at the line, and he'll be the one that calls the run game, the run play, run after run after run. The defenses are able to bait him into doing that. There's got to be something there. There's got to be some sort of disconnect. And maybe you're right. Maybe that it's just another year that he needs for everything to kind of click and speed up with him and Bill O'Brien, and why hit the reset button and bring somebody in with a whole new system. And that's a fair point, and that's probably the strongest argument for keeping O'Brien. But at this point, I don't know. I just think that there might be another style of offense that can kind of take advantage of all of Deshaun's skills, not just some of them.
I just want to see, did you think that the screen timed out a little bit?
I did.
Yes, that was the goal. Okay, cool. No, I get what you're saying, but I also think that the fact that there's a balance, right, that needs to be found with Deshaun and his running ability and his passing ability. My biggest fear is that
No, definitely.
I don't want to go Lamar Jackson. It's so funny. People are so caught up in the success of certain quarterbacks and offenses in this league. Lamar Jackson, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying people in general. I know you know the difference, but Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson are two totally different quarterbacks. You can't run Deshaun Watson the way you run Lamar Jackson. I think there's a balance, and I do think that we need to find that balance. But I also think that what Bill O'Brien's doing is grooming him to not rely on that aspect of his game and be able to sit in the pocket and pick a defense apart. That's what Bill O'Brien's always wanted in a quarterback. And I think that he likes the aspect of Deshaun being able to do it, but I don't think he wants him to think that that's something he'll have to rely on. And especially with his rookie season and the second season, given our offensive line being so bad, I think Deshaun knew that he was going to have to be very mobile to be able to stand up and be able to make the throws. And I think this season, it was an adjustment between understanding, okay, these last 2 years were a little different than this season. I have a little bit more time to throw. I can be a little bit more methodical. And I think Deshaun's trying to find that balance himself. But at the end of the day,
ultimately what it comes down to is one of the things about Bill O'Brien's offense, the Patriots style offense, is they don't run a lot of play action. They don't run a lot of moving pockets because the quarterback has the most options this way. There's the most routes that are able to be put in play. They're able to see the defense in the best way. With Deshaun Watson, his rookie year, he showed the most talent. He is one of the best ball handlers in the league, and that's pulling off a play action pass. And he has shown the ability to go roll out to either the right or the left and to bootleg very, very successfully. When I talk about taking advantage of both his running style and his ability to pass, I'm talking about more along the line of a Shanahan-style offense, a Kubiak-style offense with the bootlegs, with the play actions that Bill O'Brien has called less and less of, even though when he does call them, we have some of the most positive plays in the entire NFL. Deshaun Watson on play action is one of the most successful plays in the entire NFL. But because it does not fit the philosophy behind the offense, we don't call it that often. Because at that point, it limits what the offense can actually do when you call a play action.
No, fair. Like I said, it's a balance. I think, and I think Bill O'Brien's shown the ability to be able to scheme up those types of plays. He's done it time and time again. It's just not consistent enough for people to be happy. But I do think that he needs to, definitely Giovanni, he needs to implement more play action, as Deshaun Watson is a better probably the best play action quarterback in the league. A lot of that has to do with his hands, and his ball security. But at the same time, I think that he just needs to find a balance between the running and the throwing. And the last thing I want is Deshaun to get hurt running the ball, but that's a risk that you have to take. And I know a lot of people thought that should have been something that happened in the in the Kansas City game. Is we should have unloaded Deshaun and we should have just let him go. And maybe it would have been different, but maybe he would have gotten hurt too. Maybe he would have torn his ACL again, and then maybe we wouldn't be in this position.
Right, and I don't want him to get hit. And I'm not talking about turning him into Lamar Jackson, where he's essentially running a glorified wishbone. I'm talking about taking advantage of his mobility, taking advantage of.
I agree. We're saying the same. We're saying the same thing.
And I think that it's just a philosophy of the Bill O'Brien offense or the Patriots offense. It's just one of those things that when Watson gets more mature in the league, I think that he would be better for this offense. It's not that I don't think that he's capable of running the offense. I just think that we probably wasted a year of his life where he could have been used as more of a mobile quarterback and kept defenses unbalanced. And it was essentially wasted because Bill O'Brien his philosophy is solid. It's like, I'm not trying to trash it. I don't think that I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, Bill O'Brien's not really a genius. No, he actually really is. Like, you look at the route design, you look at the play designs, like, he does do a really good job with our offense. However, again, and it's something that I've kind of floated out there, and I need to actually write it down and put it on paper. I think Bill O'Brien's, as a coach, it's one of his best qualities and it's one of his biggest weaknesses, is he's great at hiding what his players cannot do. But I do not think that he is the best at taking advantage of their skill sets and when they have unusual skill sets. We talked about it with Matthew. We've talked about it with Clowney at length. And you can also kind of tell when somebody's a Bill O'Brien guy because they'll buy into his system. And even though they're going to have to sacrifice their own stats and their own glories and whatnot, and they buy into his system and he loves them for it. But as a coach, he should turn around and be able to spotlight those abilities that are not typically in the spotlight with his offense or his defense.
I think that you're 100% correct. I think we're saying the same exact thing. I think that it's just a balancing thing. All right. Draft day event for day 2 of the draft, since we don't have a day 1 pick. We're in the works of locking down the venue now. Still have 1 player confirmed. Should know more this week about the other 2 players potentially. Make sure you guys go check out the Jalen Strong interview on all podcast platforms. It's also on YouTube somewhere. It's just not me and Jalen. Make sure you guys, I've always wanted to say this, and now I guess I can. Make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube and tell a friend about us. Leave us a review, leave some comments on podcasts. Make sure you guys go and leave reviews and tell some friends about us. We are the #1 Texans podcast for a reason. It's because we don't give you the AM radio bullshit that you guys are hearing on a daily basis.
I'm actually loving the live shows now with the scrolling feed. Like, dude, this has been cool.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I like it, and I can't wait till we continue to get more people to build the platform. Thank you, Giovanni and Taylor, for staying on during the stream. We'll be here every either Monday or Tuesday. Outside of that, I hope you guys all have a great Valentine's Day. Make sure you make that woman feel special that is in your life, or man that is in your life, or your boyfriend or husband or whoever it is that you're dating, whatever it would be. Make sure that they feel special that day. I know I'm going to do that. Hit the click like and subscribe button. I am YoungAriGold signing off for Texans Unfiltered. We will catch you guys next week. Eric, are we still live?
We are still live. I was waiting for the credits.
Oh, yeah, hold on. Here we go.
Loved this episode of Texans Unfiltered? We'd love for you to be a Patreon supporter.
We're learning.
Your support allows us to provide you with the best Texans podcast possible. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HoustonFBPod and everywhere podcasts can be found. and join our community on www.texansunfiltered.com or on Discord at Texans Unfiltered. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Okay, now we're done, guys. We'll see you guys next week.